So if you could tell me what it is that you do.
You don't want my name first?
Sure, you could give me your name. Sure, yes.
Okay.
Who are you?
All right. I'm Manuel Manga, and I'm the co-founder of the Institute for Evolutionary Leadership, which is based in Oakland, California. And what I do is I'm a teacher, I'm a consultant, and I am a coach. And so primarily I work with people in leadership positions or people who are planning to be in leadership positions to support them in their development, in particular development of being a better leader, being more effective, and also in developing a larger purpose for the work. So that's basically what we do.
How do people find you?
Different ways. People find us through seminars that I do. So people tell other people, network. People find us through our website. We have a web page. People find me through also Facebook. You know, we have a Facebook, one of those Facebook public image page. And through networking. I do a lot of speaking engagements and volunteer to talk at different places, and people usually, find that interesting, so they want to know more about us.
So what do you do this for? Why do you do it?
I do it because, number one, we as you could say, as a humanity, we are in an evolutionary crisis. That's what I call it. Other people call it collapse. Other people call it overshoot. Other people call it that we are facing, a big crisis in our world. And just to give you an example, climate change. Okay, to give you an example of the crisis that we're in. So why do I do this? Because we have a complex crisis in front of us as humanity, and most people are aware to a point, but they're not sure how it all fits and what to do about it. And my work is about understanding the problem that we are in as humanity, and how can we transform that problem into a better future for humanity. At the macro level, which could be the global, at the meso level, which could be my country or society, and at the micro level, which could be my community or my personal life. So we try to give people leadership skills to be able to do something about that crisis rather than being passive, resigned, or reactive to it.
Do you think that there are particular qualities of a leader, or do you think people can cultivate them to become leaders?
My approach is that people can cultivate both the qualities to become a leader, and also what I particularly like to focus on is what I call competencies. And the competencies to me are different than qualities. The competencies are more like skill building. And with those skills, you can take action. You can build them. Some of our qualities are wonderful, but some people are, you could say, have natural quality, and some people don't have those. So I believe that anyone can learn to be a leader, but you can learn by developing those competencies. And in my leadership approach, we teach people, leaders, 7 competencies that I have selected from many others among my 25, 30 years of working. And so I picked the 7 best that I think are powerful and useful for confronting the situation that we're in and for creating a better future.
Can you tell me what they are?
Yes. Yes. For example, one of the key competencies is systems thinking. All our problems that we're facing as humanity are systemic. They're all interconnected. So climate and economy and our culture and our way of life are all interconnected, interdependent. So if we want to solve things like climate or our economic situation, we have to understand systems thinking. So that's one of the competencies. And I had the pleasure to study with some great systems thinkers like Peter Senge at MIT. I'm one of the founders of the Society for Organizational Learning with Peter Senge in Boston. I had the pleasure to study systems with Bucky Fuller back in the 70s and 80s. And people like Fritjof Capra, I just took his course, which is a wonderful course on systems thinking. I think every leader should be a systems thinker, and they're not. That's the sad part about it. So that's one component. To go through them briefly, the other one is what I call we need to learn about the power of language, the power of conversation, because we humans are conversational animals. And what we do with language, with story, with narrative. So what we have to do is get better at using that for a constructive relationship, so that we can dialogue, so that we can together talk about what future do we want, as opposed to, you could say, yelling at each other or screaming at each other. So we need to have what I call a generative language, okay? So that's another competency. Another competency that I think is key is personal evolution. Every one of us has the freedom to reinvent ourselves. We all have the freedom to say, I want to be a better human being. I want to be a human being that is going to contribute to a better future. That's one of the things that brings me here to this conference at Zen, because there are people here who, whatever stage of their life, they have come to see that they want to use their life and their wisdom and their energy and their intelligence for something good. Okay, so I call that personal evolution. So that's 3 so far. And then there's something we call systemic sustainability, because we need to create sustainable systems that are good for humans, that are good for the environment, and that are good for the whole planet. So it's not one or the other. Sometimes you see an environmental group taking care of the environment, and then you see a social justice group taking care of people. But in systemic sustainability, you see the interdependence between those two. Okay, so it's not one or the other. We need social justice and environmental care. Okay, so that's 4. The next competency is what we call ontological designing. Now, this is a complex competency. It's not that well known, but what it has is the designing element to see that we humans are very creative, right? We are by nature designers. And the good part is that we can design a lot of things. And most of the things that we have around us have been designed by other people, the buildings, the cities, the cars. But in ontological designing, you take it a step further. You begin to design the social systems. You begin to design, maybe we need to redesign the culture, not just the car or the bridge. Okay, those are nice things, but we need to redesign the culture that will bring out the best in human beings. Sometimes the cultures that we have today are, one could say, oppressive or conflict, or in some countries, aggressive. So we need cultures that are peaceful, loving, flourishing. And ontological designing says we can do that. But we have to, just like you design a house, you have to say, where do you want the living room and where do you want everything in the kitchen? It's like, what kind of culture do we want? And to me, it's amazing that most people don't see themselves as cultural designers. Why not? Who do you think is up? Who's going to make it up? If you look at our history in America, the founding fathers were cultural designers. They designed the Constitution for this country. They said we have a Bill of Rights, we have certain rights. They designed the kind of culture that would promote freedom and democracy. So we need to now create a culture that promotes freedom, democracy, and justice, and sustainability, and flourishing, etc., etc. So 5. The 6th one has to do, if you're going to do that, then you get to see that these are very tough challenges. Somebody says to you, you're going to redesign a culture? Wow, who are you to do that? Or you're going to redesign our economic system? Who are you, right, to do that? Or you're going to redesign our society? Well, guess what? It's up to us. And we call those adaptive challenges. We call those adaptive challenges because they are adaptive, they require a change in our mental models, assumptions, worldviews, okay? And often in our values, how we live. So you can see how when we change our culture, in our values in our culture, we are confronting an adaptive challenge. You see? Now, I happen to learn this from a good teacher of mine, Ronald Heifetz, who is a professor of leadership at John F. Kennedy School of Government. And he's been teaching adaptive leadership for many years. And I had the pleasure to meet him, to study. I love his work. And what I've done is integrate that into my work as a good student. So I want to make sure that, and he's amazing. But what I bring to this work is to apply the adaptive challenge skills to the challenges that we're facing as a global society, etc. Okay, so that was the 6. Okay? Now, in order to do that, we need to have wisdom. And wisdom is something that we are not have enough of. Okay? We need wisdom and we need visions of a better future. So they go together, wisdom and a vision. So what happens? Most of our leaders are trained to apply knowledge to problem solving. So they're very good at that. You can go to an engineering school and learn how to be an engineer and solve a problem and build a bridge, etc., put a rocket to the moon, that kind of stuff. Those are technical problems, okay? And we have knowledge, but we also can do negative things with that knowledge. We can create nuclear weapons. We can create economic systems that destroy our environment, okay? We can create wars. So we need wisdom more than knowledge nowadays. We are in short need of of wisdom. And one of the things that I look for in people like conscious elders is an accumulation of wisdom to be able to decide what kind of future do we want and how do we want to use the knowledge that we have today, for what purpose. So those are the 7 competencies. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. So you could say that those competencies are your toolkit. Imagine so if you are an architect and you want to build a house, first you design it and then you build it. But you cannot build a house without certain tools. You need a ruler, a hammer, etc., especially if you're working with materials, right? Well, an evolutionary leader, which is what I contribute to developing, an evolutionary leader uses the 7 competencies as a toolkit to design and build a better future.
It's amazing. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing evolutionary leadership more or less around 20 years.
Are there any people in the world that I might know that came out of your school? Or
out of my school, let me see. Most of the people that come out of my school are on the younger, at this point, younger crowd. And they're not well known necessarily, but they do hold, they're not yet, but they do have good, you could say, good projects, good intentions, good ideas for building a better world. In fact, we have an evolutionary leadership community that's based out of Oakland, where we have about 35 members, mostly on the younger crowd, including 10 people from international, that kind of stuff. I've been a teacher of this for many years, and I don't know, I don't keep track necessarily of all my students, but they stay in communication, etc. Yeah, good question.
So it feels like it really could take off and grow, and
yes,
we'll see these new leaders out there thinking systemically and
right,
progressively and unified in
yeah,
their thinking.
Well, I can only tell you that, for example, here in Zen, Jeff Anscott, who you see is working here, he attended one of my seminars, and that's why him and I are collaborating to present tomorrow something that we're calling the New Worldview. It's a seminar. So tomorrow, Jeff, myself, Maggie, and Karen are collaborating to do that. But he came to one of my seminars, even though he's not very famous. But here's the thing. There's a lot of great evolutionary thinkers out there, okay? And the sad part is that people don't read those books nowadays. People have a very short attention span. And second, if you read those books, you get inspired, but then what to do? What do you do? So for me, one of the inspirations of evolutionary leadership was reading books by evolutionary thinkers like Bucky Fuller, Jonas Salk, and I could go on. There's Thomas Berry, and there are many other people that I consider to be, Riane Eisler, for example. She's a great evolutionary thinker. And my contribution is to take those great ideas and put them into work, put them into action, okay? Now, here's the thing. A lot of the people who are in positions of power and leadership, they don't want to change the status quo. They want to keep the status quo going. So those people don't necessarily become my clients, necessarily, although I try. So who becomes my clients? Younger people, usually, and hopefully now older, wiser people, like the Zen community. Because if we do have 50 million older senior people in America, those people could be supported to be able to contribute to making a better world. So I'm looking forward to that.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that you think would be an important part of your message?
Yes, I think that we need to empower our organizations to be more effective. Organizations like Zen, for example. So one of the things that I'm curious about is how do you make the organization be more effective to do the work that it wants to do? Because you can have a lot of committed individuals, but that does not necessarily say the organization is effective. So one of my concerns is that there's you could say there's a stage to go from the individual to the organization, and that's what I say is important, because an organization has much more power sometimes than an individual. And the next challenge that I like to see is how these organizations really collaborate with each other so that they become even more impactful. Because what you see a lot of times in the world today, I mean, Zen, for example, is a small organization, is growing, but there may be hundreds of other organizations doing good things, but they're not collaborating. So we need to create the leadership that sees the opportunity to collaborate among all these different organizations and to collaborate for a common vision, a common purpose. You see? So this is what I would say the tough area is, how to take the energy of a lot of good people and translate it to an effective organization.
So that's the N in the Conscious Elder Network, which is collaborating with other groups.
Right.
As many of them stood up
Yes.
and identified who they were in the groups that they're with.
Right.
So bringing them all together.
Exactly. That's an excellent step forward. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Mm-hmm. To do that, and so that they all collaborate with each other. And my contribution would be to make sure that the leadership in each one of those organizations has the skills to do it. And I would say sometimes they have the passion, but not the skills. So we should not confuse passion and skills. Okay? The passion is great, but you need the skills. And this is where I come in. And sometimes I'm a little bit, you could say, tough on this. Okay? But any other questions?
Yeah. What's our time?
Yeah.
I think we're done?
Yes.